You don't always funk with me, but when you do, you funk with me so hard. Hi, I ain't funking around. You don't always funk with me, but when you do, you funk with my heart. Your funk's really getting me down.
Well, I am having an excellent afternoon with Lark Lo, who is a podcaster, educator, entrepreneur, advocate, urban planning, designer, activist, who is from Los Angeles, but now currently is located in Bloomfield. Welcome to Ark Republic.
Hello. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm just kind of like, I'm excited. I got all of those labels. Some of them are true, some of them are not, but hey, whatever. I'll take it. I can take whatever I can get. I don't care.
Front like the LA way, right?
Yeah. Be LA, very LA about it.
I've had an excellent afternoon with you talking about all of the things that you do. I first want to focus on Black kids and outer space. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me the concept of Black kids outer space?
Well, the concept is outer space has to do with the environment, has to do with outside. And so I cover urban planners, architects, bicycle advocates, transportation engineers, just engineers, people who have to do with our space, people who work within our space, but also people who are fighting gentrification. Because, how we move around in our space, it's a political thing, especially in the United States where Black people's movement has been prevented so much. So I'm like, but I wanted to have a show that talked about all of these issues, but in a way that wasn't pathologizing the community. I think so many times we have things where it's like the name of it is about us dying or being killed. I wanted, when you watch the show, to kind of be like happy, like, oh, Black kids in outer space. I want to go to outer space. And so, yes, while we talk about hard issues, I also want to talk about issues that were hopeful. Like I want to have like entrepreneurs on there. I want to have Afrofuturist artists or Afro-surrealists, because I kind of want to use Baraka's term, since that's the actual term, Afro-surrealist. I only use Afrofuturist because of the hashtag, but if the term is Afro-surrealist, and we're in Newark, New Jersey, where the term was birthed and the idea was birthed. And also, I mean, of course, I was inspired by Black Panther, but I was also inspired by Space is a Place by Sun Ra. So you'll also see Black Kids in Outer Space. You'll see Space is a Place on all my stuff, because I kind of view that as kind of an inspiration.
How long has it been in existence?
Black Kids in Outer Space hasn't been in existence that long. Maybe like since January or something like that.
Okay.
What is it? I don't know what month it is. Like what?
It's June. It's June.
Yeah.
Mid-June.
Maybe February. But it's a kind of an offshoot of. I started a magazine called Velo, VELO, and so that was started 2 years ago. And the Black Kids in Outer Space, like the vodcast, I was just like, oh, this is like so amazing, and it kind of just took off from there, and it just it started out, it grew from Velo, and then from there because I guess when I was in New Jersey and I saw so much like racism and so much exclusion of Black people, I'm like, I have to focus on Black people, because literally even if I didn't care about Black people, literally that's kind of like the thing that's stopping complete streets, comfortable streets, safe streets, Black people. Like the racism is just so extreme. That's the only reason that, I mean, and it's something I noticed. It's in every city. It's not just here. It's in Baltimore. It's in Oakland. It's in Detroit. I mean, the most dangerous. That's the whole thing. It's the most dangerous streets where you are most likely to get killed are some of the blackest cities in America. We're 10% of the population. We shouldn't be number one in traffic deaths. That shouldn't be happening. 10% of the population.
Which is somehow how the Black Panthers got started. These people kept getting killed on this one particular block, right? And there had to be some type of advocacy around it because there was no traffic light.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, right. I gotta figure out how to tie that in. I was like, really? Okay, all right.
But I wanted to know what has been your guests thus far have been absolutely impressive. Can you talk about some of the guests and what has been their response when you go to them and say, hey, I have this thing called Black Kids in Outer Space, this is what I'm doing?
Everybody has been really kind of like, oh, I want to be on, because that's the whole thing. There's some people who I thought were kind of like higher, like, they've had a few books and they're in academia, and I'm like, oh, would you like to be on my show? They're like, yeah, that's awesome. I'm like, okay, that's weird. And
because nobody's talking about it.
Yeah.
That's it, right?
Yeah. And I talk to people who are like bicycle people, like people who were in the park department. I mean, like everybody who's who's from various worlds. I mean, everybody's been very receptive towards it. So I think that that's something that gives me hope, that people are so receptive and they're so into being part of it, and people have been watching it, which is good. Because sometimes you have like this great idea, you're like, it's a great idea, and like everybody's like, no, it's not, because nobody watches it. So
I would like for you to start with describing and explaining Afro-Surrealists, and then as well explaining Afrofuturism for those who have heard the term but are not necessarily familiar.
Well, Afrofuturist, and I'm going to be kind of like, I'm kind of in my own like way, like, okay, but Afrofuturist is kind of like how Black people are in the future without white people being around. And the term, some white guy came up with that term, so whatever. But Afro-Surrealist was kind of from Baraka. There's a poet that's from New Jersey, or actually Newark, and it's a little bit deeper than just us in the future, what we'll do without white people. It's also us in the past, us in the present, how we are as African people, how we're impacted by racism, and how it's surreal and how it's bizarre, and how we can on our own create our own path and our own way. That may not be the technical book definition of it, but that's kind of like my vision of it. Like, we're here and we're traveling. Like, for me, Afro-Surrealism, we are not the aliens. They are the aliens. I think that's the thing when people kind of think Afrofuturist, they think we're aliens. Or even when I talk about Black Kids in Outer Space, I'm like, no, we're the human beings. It's everybody else. No, I was kidding.
No, I like that. I like that.
Yeah. Like, I'm kind of like, who are you? What are you doing here?
So, like, having this foreign encounter of the third kind.
Exactly. And that kind of like, they're experimenting on us and bothering us and all this. And we are kind of out here, being human beings, trying to be spiritual, trying to do our thing. And we are being kind of like poked and prodded, and this is we can't have that. But it's kind of like, I'm giving people a blueprint, a map. How do we get out of here?
Right.
But how do we thrive in outer space too? Like, how do we thrive? So, I mean, it means so many things. It's a future. It's the past. It's history. It's now. It's what we can do. It's what's going on right now. But it's like I try to just give people hope. I always kind of go like, what's your vision for the future in a positive way? If that makes any sense to you.
Yeah, and what prompted you to look at urban planning as the lens in exploring these alien encounters?
I have to say that what really kind of gave me, I have to go back in time. I actually go back to 2006, where I was in Santa Monica Pier, and I saw Inconvenient Truth. With Al Gore, and I'm not a neoliberal type or anything like that, but when I saw this, I was like, I am killing the planet. Now, I'm from Los Angeles. I'm from a Black community, but I'm from a middle class Black community. I'm from a neighborhood where I was driven back and forth to school, so I had a very limited scope of what being Black was in not only just America, but also in Los Angeles, and not to be like kind of American-centric, I should say in the United States, because Mexico and Canada are also America. I hate being that person. So I saw this, and when I saw the movie, I gave up my car, which I know in Los Angeles, you guys will get it. Everybody else is like, so? But okay, in Los Angeles, I gave up my car, I sold it, and I actually quit my job. And I went on a quest. I took that money, and I went on a quest where I just rode my bike, and I just took the bus, and I just took public transit, and I moved from Los Feliz, and I moved to Boyle Heights. I went from Los Feliz to Boyle Heights.
Which is the west side to the east side.
The west side to the east side. I went to a white neighborhood to an almost 99% Latino or Latinx community, a community that my family moved to in 1890, and I lived there, and I started working and doing writing work and artwork in Compton. And my experience from going to Los Feliz to Hollywood, which is a white neighborhood that's kind of quirky, to a white neighborhood that's a little bit less quirky, was much different going to a Latinx neighborhood to a African American neighborhood, and that was working class. The public transportation system just blew my mind at how different and horrible it was, and how long you had to wait. I had to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to get to meetings on time at like 8 o'clock. The cops were bothering me, harassing me. And the thing is that LA, owing to the fact that it's not as hyper segregated because black people, there's less of us there, owing to that, it's a different experience. If you don't, it's not like in New York and on the East Coast, New Jersey, you cannot escape racism. In LA, in some ways, you kind of can. You could imagine in a surrealist way that you think that things are not happening to you. Right. You can pretend in Los Angeles. But once you get out of your car and you're on the bus and you're on the train, there is no pretending. You're out there on the streets. The police are bothering you. I was stopped regularly for prostitution. I was not a prostitute. I was stopped regularly. You're right. I had to put that in there. I was not a prostitute.
We not tricky.
At least not then. And I was, it was just like, but I was getting stopped on this regular basis because, like, how dare you be a black body and be out on the street? You're not allowed to be on the street unless you have a uniform on. Because also, too, I'm kind of like an eclectic dresser. Just like, how are you being an eclectic dresser, walking around the street in Los Angeles, being a black person? You must be a prostitute. There must be something that you are doing. And see, from there, I was just very like, I'm like talking super loud.
No.
Yeah.
You need to in this space.
But I was just like, when I saw this, it was like the novel Indochine or the movie Indochine, where this woman who was Vietnamese, and she was kind of adopted by a French colonizer, and she didn't know that her people were suffering. That's almost what happened to me. I called my mom. I taken the blue line to the east side of South Central, and I was like, Mommy, there are poor people out here. Why didn't you tell me? There are poor people for real.
Oh, yeah, Rosa Parks line.
I was just like, oh no, this is not right. And so that's kind of really what politicized me in a way that I was political before, but not like this. Because I was seeing the police harass people. I was seeing structural racism in regards to the Blue Line, which was the most dangerous train, not just in Los Angeles, but in the United States.
Why is it dangerous?
Because the way they have it designed, it's designed so it's at grade, and there's no like safety barriers, and it's kind of like in order to catch the way the buses run out in the eastern part of South Central Los Angeles, you miss your bus, you have an hour. So if you are on public transit and you miss that connection, you are going to get fired from your job, which means you're going to be homeless, which means your life is going to be, and there's like 50% of African American homeless people there. So if the train is coming and your bus is coming, you think you can make it. Like you're in your car and you run your red light, you do the same thing. My bus is coming, I see the train, people are like, well, you should just I'm like, how many lights have you run? If you run a red light, don't say that you don't understand why somebody might run across the track. But people were running across the track to catch their bus, and they were getting run over, getting crashed into. And I don't call it an accident because it wasn't accidentally designed that way. The Blue Line was designed in a deadly fashion because black people live there, because Latinx people live there, because working class people live there, because poor people live there, but also because black people live there. I don't want to have this conversation that we're having this, it's just about class, because it's not just about class. They have destroyed neighborhoods with arterial lanes. I think about Brooklyn, and there was another Brooklyn. It was in North Carolina. It was third, I think his name is, I want to say Fox, but maybe that's the wrong name. But he was an African American head of Department of Transportation. He was raised in Brooklyn, North Carolina. It was an African American neighborhood. It was the turn of the century. It was middle class. We had businesses, and they were like businesses that black people owned. And they put a highway through it. They put another highway through it. They redlined and destroyed it. So it's like, this is not like, it just happens to be that all of these dangerous roads are in African American neighborhoods. And I talk about African American neighborhood because African Americans are the most hyper-segregated community in the United States. And so with the fact that so many dangerous roads are in communities that's essentially 10% of the U.S. population. You have that many dangerous roads, and also too, to go to hypersegregation. That's a term by Douglas Massey out of Princeton, and there's 20 points, 20 criteria, and if you make 5 of those criteria, you're hypersegregated. And in different time, not always at the same time, there's been 29 communities in the African American community that have been hypersegregated. So people kind of go, well, why aren't you talking about everybody else? Because no one else is hypersegregated. Only black people. We are predominantly, disproportionately hypersegregated, and people will talk about everybody else but black people. So that's another reason why I call it Black Kids in Outer Space. And I know I'm just going on and on and on.
No. You're definitely very passionate, and I think that community in North Carolina you're talking about is Hayti.
No, but it's also maybe it's Hayti, but it was one called Brooklyn. She was gone.
Oh, Brooklyn. Okay.
I'm sure you're right because they've destroyed so many neighborhoods.
Right.
That you are correct.
Right.
That's another community.
Yeah.
And you're kind of like, what was that? I'm like, you're right, because there's so many of our communities that they've actively taken highways through and freeways through and destroyed, and people think like it was just happened to be. No, they actually go, these are black people, let me destroy their neighborhood.
Right.
And it's not just it's just like I don't use the term accident, I use crash. I go, if your street is designed poorly and people are dying on it, it's not an accident, it's a crash. You created this dangerous environment. You do not understand how engineering and physics work, but no, you do understand. You just don't care when the people that are getting run over are black people.
What about the 105 through Watts and Norwalk? That's one of these highways that we're talking about.
Yes, that highway actually took several of my relatives' houses. The 105 freeway. They took several of my relatives' houses, and not only that, they kind of took apart an African American neighborhood, and then they didn't want to pay people. Think about how much those houses are worth now. They were so close to downtown LA. Think how much those houses are worth now. And not only that, when you think about the 105 freeway, the freeway doesn't even have exits. It goes from, they just made a freeway so white people wouldn't have to touch or look at black people on the way to the airport. How sick are you that you made a freeway with almost like, you can drive and drive. I remember being on the 105 freeway, and I used to be afraid because I'm like, oh no, I hope I don't run out of gas, because it would go so long before you would get to a next exit, especially when you're going through Black LA, because they didn't want black people. It wasn't for black people. It was to help white people who were from Downey to get to the airport, white people who were from Orange County to get to the airport. So how can we make it so they don't have to go up Century and don't have to see the scourge that the white people call the black community?
Right.
I mean, I'm still like, that was another thing, just like, you just set me off. I forgot.
No, that's good. Because the 105 converges with the 710 and the 405.
Yep.
So it's like you have Long Beach Boulevard, and perhaps like Compton Avenue, and then like Willowbrook, which is close to the airport, right?
You just go like, kind of like, okay, when's it going to be the next exit?
Exactly.
And
like Linwood gone, Compton gone.
Yeah, and then you think about the Green Line, how it's set up. I mean, I had an old blog. Go ahead.
Before you talk about the Green Line, for those who are not familiar with the Green Line, what is its path in LA?
The Green Line goes from, it was supposed to go to the airport, but it goes not to the airport. People are like, oh, I'm going to take the Green Line to the airport. Good luck with that. It goes from Downey, which is where our kind of county offices are. So if you want to get your birth certificate or something like that. But I mean, it's nowhere. I mean, it's Downey. It's like, look it up, Google it. Downey. It's a weird place to drop off. So it goes from Downey all the way almost to the airport. But then you get on there and then you get on the shuttle, and then you get, I mean, it's not, it's, and I think the thing is just so funny. It just never got to the airport. I mean, I think now they're talking about getting the line to the airport, but we also had to fight for that because they didn't want to build it right. Damian Goodman had to fight to get them to build the train, the Crenshaw line. He had to fight to get stopped at Leimert Park. He had to fight to get it underground. I mean, they just wanted to just run a train through our neighborhood, and I can't believe that we still have to go through this even today. Like, we're still fighting this, and these urban planners are like, we're not like Robert Moses, we are so different, we care about you, we care about engagement, blah blah blah. I'm like, you know what Robert Moses did? As evil as he was, Robert Moses built He built housing for poor people. What have you built for poor people?
And for those who don't know who he is, can you explain?
Robert Moses was a master builder. He was a person that kind of like changed. He built a he built a highway in New York so that people who are from black neighborhoods who had to take the bus, they couldn't, I guess he made it so low they couldn't go through. He ripped up neighborhoods, put in roads, put in highways. I always say that the thing about Robert Moses is that I say he filled in the lines. We called him the master builder, but he filled in the lines. He built lots of parks. He built 150,000 units of housing. But while he did build things, he also filled in the lines that rich men wanted. Rich men wanted to drive their cars. You think about the Great Gatsby and the scene where they ran over Myrtle to kind of like, go into my whole like fiction thing, and how they ran over Myrtle like she was a dog, like she was nothing because she was working class, because she was trash. They said it was an accident, but it wasn't an accident. And then they said she was a homewrecker, so it was okay that we ran her over. And that was kind of like these men. They wanted to drive these rich, wealthy men of the early teens wanted to drive their cars very quickly, and they got Robert Moses to build them their roads. I mean, we used to have a wonderful, I know that New York, for people who are from Los Angeles or other places, New York's public transit system seems like a dream, because it is for me, but it used to be better. It used to be pollution free. It used to be able to carry extra capacity. It used to go out to all of the further boroughs. And those things kind of got taken away because of the car. And people kind of use him as like the bad guy in regards to what bad urban planning is, when you just build and you don't take the people into account. And as bad as he was, he still created, or was part of, I hate saying he built them. He was part of he led people, directed people to build housing for poor people. And the thing is now is that we don't have that. We don't have a master builder, urban planner who's going, let's build housing for poor people. I'm not saying the housing he built was nice. It was horrible. It was disgusting. But what do we have now? Nothing. People are being thrown to the street, and they have this affordable housing where you got to make $70,000 a year. My fiance has a PhD. He has, in his job, he doesn't even make $70,000 a year. I mean, people kind of think about that you could be a PhD and not be able to afford, and to have a job, have a PhD and
I know that very
job,
well. I know that very well. Yes, I know that very well.
Not qualified for affordable housing because you don't make enough money. So, I mean, especially, you look at places like Brooklyn, you look at places like South Central, you look at places like Newark. I mean, even black people who are middle class, we still make less money than white people who are middle class. We kind of have this, especially people who are middle class and educated, we kind of have this like, la la la, I'm like so snobby. But if you really kind of compare us to white people who have our same credentials, we still make less money. We still have less money. So when you're putting these affordable housing mediums that are up so high, but also too the taxes. We can't afford the taxes. I mean, in Los Angeles, you're kind of lucky because we have that Prop 13 if you got your house early enough. But black people are being put out of their houses because they cannot afford the taxes. They cannot afford to stay in their homes in Brooklyn and Newark. We were kind of like, if you have a house, you're fine. No, you're not fine, because if your house value goes up, your taxes go up. And if you're not making the same kind of money owing to, economic oppression and institutional racism, you will lose your house.
So in this conversation, we kind of skipped over, and I love your energy. Keep it. We skipped over the journey of you leaving Los Angeles and coming to the East Coast. But now you are here in the New York metropolitan area, as they call it, and specifically in Jersey. What are some of the glaring transportation issues that you've noticed?
Oh my God, where can I start? This is one of the most dangerous cities to walk in America.
In Newark?
No, New Jersey.
Oh, New Jersey.
Your whole state is one of the most dangerous states to walk in. In Newark, this state, you have MacArthur Highway, which is the most, it was, I think for the last 2 times, the Tri-State Transportation Organization that kind of decides what's safe and what's not safe. Route 21 has been deemed one of the most dangerous roads in Essex County. like the most deadly road. The most people have gotten killed on MacArthur Highway. I mean, the road is just, and the thing is that frustrates me, they redid that road. They paid $377 million in the aughts to redo that road to make it safe. And if you read the document, it says, we've added crosswalks. We've read, and I was like, what crosswalk are you talking about? Like, I mean, and it's like, what circle jerk got kudos for that? Because it's super fast. People are still dying on it. People are still crashing on it. People, and the thing is that when you think MacArthur Highway, if you're from other places like me, you think highway, you think, oh, there aren't restaurants, and the New Jersey PAC's not by it, and Seton Hall's not by it, and the Prudential's not by it, and the medical center's not by it. You wouldn't think all of the Penn Station Newark is not by it. You would think, oh, this is a place where people have to walk around. You would make it somewhat safe. Gee, I would actually like comfortable. I hate the fact that for black people that we're using this low barrier of safe, but it's like it's not even safe. You can't even cross the street. You cross the street and people try to hit you. Another problem is Bloomfield Avenue, another deadly street. Bloomfield Avenue essentially connects urban Essex to suburban Essex. And let me say this, connects black Essex to white Essex. People are like, well, what, to be very clear, and it's, it's been referenced in The Sopranos, which is a HBO show, and it's a fast street. It's a 4-lane road. It's an arterial lane, or actually an arterial road, and arterial roads are roads that carry you to highways, freeways, toll lanes, carries you out of town, to disproportionately in African American and Latinx communities, and disproportionately they put fast food restaurants on it because you're whipping in and out of town. So they actually want to put these restaurants on these arterial lanes or arterial roads. So you have people being killed on them. You have fast food restaurants on them. You have them causing pollution. And this is Bloomfield Avenue. Bloomfield Avenue, where people who are, where it's lined from people who are African American, Latinx, and even the white people who don't have quite enough money to live on the hill, they live along Bloomfield Avenue. And, the thing is that they had this complete streets plan, but if you look at it, it kind of separates, it stops around southern Bloomfield, Bellevue area, because it seems to me from talking to people, they don't want Bloomfield to be a complete street or connected because they don't want black people from Newark possibly getting into suburban Essex, which is sick. You kill white people so that black people won't get there. This is how sick some of these policies are. And I'm not even like saying it in a way that's like, I'm not being funny. I really think it's a sickness. You would actually rather have people die than to have people of a race that you feel that you're better than be able to get into your neighborhood. And I don't understand that.
So let's talk about what I hear you talking about is racism in public policy. Mm-hmm. How did you begin to be involved in public policy in the work that you do?
I guess how I became involved in public policy is because I tried to get a bike lane on Crenshaw Boulevard, which is like, if you're black and you're in LA and you're like on the west side of, you're on the west side of black LA, you're like, what does that mean? Okay, South Central is a huge place, and it's just a catch-all term for where black people live. There's a west side of South Central and there's an east side. The west side has slightly more money slightly more money than the east side of South Central. So when I say, I don't want to kind of like be that person that's just only talking about my experience, but if you're from the west side of South Central, chances are you lived around Crenshaw Boulevard.
Right. The Crenshaw corridor is like the main street for Black LA.
Yeah, black
on
LA.
The west side.
On the west side.
Central Avenue is the east side.
The east side. But like I said, I want to acknowledge my sisters and brothers on the east side and don't act like, oh, Black LA is only the Crenshaw area, because it's not. Black LA is a lot bigger than that. So we have the Crenshaw area, and I wanted a bike lane on Crenshaw Boulevard. I wanted to have traffic calming. Let me say again, the configuration of the 4-lane road with no median, that is the most dangerous configuration of a road that exists. And you see them in almost every black neighborhood. Because Bloomfield Avenue, you see them on Crenshaw Boulevard. I think Crenshaw probably had three lanes. Crenshaw is a beast. Crenshaw Boulevard is a beast. That's how you.
It's like a 6-lane at some times. It's a 6-lane thoroughfare.
It's just like no matter where you go in the United States, it's like they put that lane right in the middle of Black LA. It's like or Black whatever city you are, they're gonna put that in the King Boulevard. It's gonna be Arterial Road and a King Boulevard, and and lots of crashes. I'm in Black America. So I tried to get a bike lane there, and what happened was, and this is not a lie, we won't tell you here, and what happened was, they wanted to build a football stadium, I forgot which team. I just remember it was Madison Square Gardens wanted to build a football stadium there.
At what part on Crenshaw?
By the Forum.
Okay.
By the Forum. I was so upset by...
So it's like Crenshaw and Manchester.
Yeah, Crenshaw and Manchester. And what happened, in order to get this stadium built, they had to skip the EIR, which is the Environmental Impact Report. I led a fight to make sure that they weren't able to skip the Environmental Impact Report. Because Madison Square Gardens has slightly more money than I do, they were able to fund some AstroTurf groups that were sent. Not only this, they were environmental groups. That's the thing that just tripped me out. They were able to fund some environmental groups in the community to say it was okay for them to skip the Environmental Impact Report. So the policy that was in place to protect the community from pollution from pollution, called the Environmental Impact Report, was able to be skipped in the black community for some jobs. I guess they're like, well, the football stadium will bring jobs and economic growth and income to the community. Like, are you bringing union jobs? Or you bring traffic? The area Crenshaw, Manchester, is full of single-family homes. Well, these people, most of them have jobs. The one on Crenshaw and Manchester, they have jobs. That's like that little strip of Crenshaw between Crenshaw and I want to call it Western, between maybe Imperial to maybe Hyde Park. That's one of the largest swaths of black homeowners in the United States. I mean, they all own their homes. They were all union workers, retired. They planned on, the city had planned on all the people being dead. They're like, I got union benefits. I'm healthy. Right. People were 90 in their homes, and I think that was the whole thing. Everybody was getting very annoyed with the fact that these black people were living too long. But I mean, I realized then the importance of policy and getting things done, and also too, in LA and in lots of the black United States, we talk a lot about the police department, but we don't talk a lot about why the police department exists. We know why it exists, the slave patrol and all that, but we don't really kind of we don't discuss the mechanisms of why the police start enforcing on people on a more extreme level, especially when you start having gentrification and you start, who are telling the police officers to go after the community? I mean, what policies are making that kind of harassment happen? Stop and frisk in New York, that wasn't the police policy. That was a policy enacted by, Rudy Giuliani. That was your mayor that enacted that policy, stop and frisk. So policy dictates what the police will do. I mean, you can rein them in, or you can kind of let them kind of go about and, by deciding what you're going to enforce. And policy is just so important. I mean, just like even with urban planning, you think about, they do level of service. So when you have a project, you have level of service. And level of service means how many cars can come in and out of a project or development. And you want to keep level of service levels high. Well, if you want to keep level of service, which is about the car, well, that's going to injure people. That's going to hurt people. I don't think that you should have we want to keep traffic moving. So I, have said, hey, why don't we have pedestrian level of service? How easy is it for a person to be able to get in and out? Like if they're walking, how easy for you to get into a facility if you're walking? I don't like these developments that have big parking lots in the front and then the development way in the back. And I've said they love putting those in black neighborhoods. They just love them to death. Like, oh, look, let me put a parking lot because they're cheap. Because if you put parking lots in, I don't know how it works everywhere, but I know in California, if you don't build on it, you don't have to pay taxes on it. So if you don't build an actual structure, you don't have to pay taxes on it. So you put all that out there. You can, if you want to, you can charge for parking. You got all this parking. You don't have to pay taxes on that property, and you put the land way in the back. So it's like, we need to be involved in the urban planning process. We need to be involved in the policies of development. We need to be involved in transportation. We need to have authentic conversations when they have these workshops like, oh, we're going to build this in your neighborhood. It's got to be real. We got to be like, if it has to be, if we decide we don't like a project, we have to be able to have the power to say no. These workshops from these transportation agencies can't just be about, this is what's going to happen. Do you understand? Because, essentially what it seems like a lot of these workshops are, like, this is happening. Do you understand?
And that's not only with transportation. That's with development, period.
Yes.
Like these quote-unquote town halls.
They're not town halls. A town hall would mean that you're listening to me and we have some kind of, I have some kind of power or say in what's going to happen to me. And we don't. And I think another thing, too, this combining street safety and comfortable streets with upzoning a neighborhood. You don't have to add a pedestrian island, to add to put a road diet, which means to slow the traffic down, to add a pedestrian island, to extend the curb so that people will have to stop and people can be able to turn and not run into people and crash into people. You don't need to upzone an area in order to do that. To me, this idea that in order to make safe streets, we have to do is upzone an area.
What is upzone?
Upzone is like when you kind of make it so, okay, we're going to put more expensive housing. We're going to try to attract people who make more money than the people here. It's more complicated than that, but just to kind of say what it is. We want to, this is an industrial area, or this is a zone for an industrial area. So what we're going to do is we're going to make it so that you can have retail here, you can have live spaces here. And we're going to make it so that it's going to be market rate. Mm-hmm. But what is market rate? What are you using to decide on market rate? Are you using the community that live there now as a median, or are you using the whole county? Mm-hmm. You do market rate in New York and Brooklyn. Well, what's the barrier? Are you looking at the people who live just in East New York, or are you looking at the people who live, in Williamsburg? How are you deciding? What are and I think that's the thing is interesting. It's like how they decide what median income is, how they decide what the income is, how they do the borders. It seems to never benefit Black people. And I think that we should also, be fighting for that. When you're building housing, you need to actually, another thing too. I'm going to skip past all that. We need to decommodify housing. Housing should be a right. It should be a universal thing. This whole thing, we're us asking them to be fair, they're never going to be fair. There's never going to be decent. They're never going to be right. Housing is a human right. It's something that everybody should have access to. It's not something that you should have to fight and struggle for. Just like, you can walk on the street, you have the freedom to walk on the street, you should also have the freedom to have a place to stay. That should be a basic. That should be part of the social contract of the United States. And I think we often get trapped in this conversation how can we negotiate with capitalism? How can we negotiate with these billion-dollar corporations? Even I was well, how how can I figure the words to, how can I negotiate with, with Donald Trump? You can't negotiate with these people. We actually, as a people, we need to kind of decide, like, hey, we need to change how these policies are. We need to change how people can throw people out of their homes, like out of their apartments, out of their homes. All these tricks in regards to tenant eviction and all this stuff. I mean, we really need to, on a larger scale, and also too, we need to talk to each other. Because there are things that are going on in California, and there are things that are going on in New York, and they're different. They're different items, but they're kind of the same thing.
And excuse me for interrupting. That's what I wanted. One of the questions I had: what were some connectivity that you saw between you being LA and you being out here that you're like, whoa, these are some things that we need to really come together and really fight and look at. And deal with, I should say.
I think the thing that we should really deal with is just the prices of housing going up and black people being pushed out of the core of all these cities, whether it be LA, Oakland, San Francisco. San Francisco, they're gone.
Yeah, black San Francisco is
there's no black San Francisco.
Right. And a lot of people don't even think that black people were in San Francisco.
And that's another thing too. This disappearing of us, this writing us out of history, this writing our neighborhoods out. Mm-hmm. Also too, this I call it gentrification journalism, mm-hmm. where they do these like stories like, oh, this neighborhood is so dangerous. Thank God this little white lady came and gave them an art program. Thank God. You have a little black kid smiling. Thank you, white lady. I mean, so it's like, you almost say, well, you know what? You could come to my neighborhood and fix it. It's clearly broken. And I think that people need to like really think about that. We've all been kind of sucked into this nonprofit industrial complex where we're like, oh, to keep it real, we talk about our neighborhoods in ways that I think we talk about our neighborhoods in a disrespectful manner. And we don't realize the beauty of our neighborhoods. Like Newark is a beautiful place. Inglewood's a beautiful place. South Central, Watts, our neighborhoods are beautiful places, and we just discuss them that way. Because when we're giving people power when we go, oh, I live in a neighborhood and it's dangerous and it's this and it's that. I'm not saying that things aren't happening, but we are in a war right now. You cannot, in the middle of a war, give away give somebody give that kind of information. You saying certain things about your neighborhood, you think they're going to help you? No, what they're going to do is, this neighborhood is ripe for picking. All right, they're weak. We can go in there and just take it. And I think that's another thing too. Think about when you talk about your neighborhood, think about what you're saying. Think about even your nonprofits. Think about what they're forcing you to say about your neighborhood and your people when you get the money. Are they making you, because that's another thing too, they force us to pathologize our community to get funding. But you see, it's not that we don't know. We do know. The system is racist. That's the problem. The system is racist. And I think that, what we need to talk about is, decommodifying housing. I mean, that's across the board. Stop making housing be worth money. It needs to be universal. And then also, too, not just for poor people, but for middle class people, everybody. It needs to be for everybody. I'm in a place like in New Jersey, the unemployment rate for African Americans is just, in Essex County, New Jersey, African Americans is 44%. Essex County, not just Newark. I'm talking about all of Essex County, 44%. We are the biggest ethnic group here. You would not know that because the press never talks about black people in Essex County like as if our numbers are that big. And also, all these nice new buildings, Audible and in Newark and Prudential. You don't see any black people in those buildings. They don't work there. I mean, that's the whole thing. You don't see black people working out here. I mean, not like they should. We're 44% of the population. So that means that we should be at least half everywhere, but we're not. And I know what they're doing at places like Prudential. It's not hard work. It's customer service. They're answering the phone. Like, no, I'll take your payment, ma'am. You're saying that black people can't have that job? No, they can have that job. You're saying black people can't work at Audible and create that stuff? They can create.
Right. And I think particularly with Newark, like Samsung and Audible and all of these major Prudential places say that they earmark a part of their jobs for new workers. But what I found out is that they're moving people who were not new workers into new work to be part of that job force that they say is for new workers. And they also provide housing. Some of the new housing that's built in Newark, where they subsidize the housing for these quote unquote new workers to live. So it even complicates the numbers even more. So people who have been here for generations are getting displaced in so many different ways. So that's interesting. You brought that up of these companies that come in, and not only do these companies displace folk in terms of the land, but they also figure out these very clever ways in keeping generations in folk, from having that type of capital access.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's something I think is something interesting on the East Coast. This whole nepotism, boys network, where it's like black people are actively excluded over and over again. I mean, I think about Walter Greason's book, Suburban Erasure, and he talked about New Jersey and suburbs and how it stopped the civil rights movement in New Jersey. Like, it was like New Jersey was doing all these awesome, amazing things, and then we started having suburbia, we started having redlining, and all of a sudden, it stopped. And I think that has something, it's that's still happening today.
Right, and just like the 105 went through Watts, the 280 went through East Orange. And East Orange at one point was a place where black people had some type of, I think, financial gain.
But you can tell when you go to East Orange, you can see the remnants of it. You can see where it used to be. Things used to be there.
Right. At one point, East Orange in the 50s was considered like the best suburban city in America. So you have houses that will resemble Maplewood or Montclair. It's just that they're not as well kept. Same structure, though. It's the very same structure. Let's go back to Black Kids in Outer Space, because I know that's your baby right now. I know you got a lot on your plate, right?
Yeah.
But let's go back to Black Kids in Outer Space. A lot of people probably who are watching this want to respond to all the issues that you're talking about, because there's at least something that they can identify that is either happening or has happened to them. What can they do to help Black Kids in Outer Space?
Okay, well, there's several things. Well, actually, two things. Number one, we have a Kickstarter. It'll be easy to find. You just put Black Kids in Outer Space Kickstarter, and it pops up, because we're the only Black Kids in Outer Space for some reason online.
Good.
And another thing you can do is you can become a paid subscriber, where you would essentially through Patreon, you kind of join like for $5 or $10 a month. You can just find out. But you can, for $10 a month, you can kind of regularly contribute that way. But right now we're trying to raise $10,000 because we're going to go in July. We're going to go to Baltimore, and then we're going to go to Houston, and then we're going to go to Detroit, and then in November we're going to New Orleans and Los Angeles. So we're not only are we talking to people, we are going to the streets and we're showing the infrastructure, and also explaining hey, I know that sometimes I'll use these terms and people are like, what are you talking about? Or even when people from workshops come in and they're using terms, people don't understand what they're saying. So I want to make short videos just explaining the terms. These are, this is a term to slow down this lane, or this is why this street is dangerous. Because people may be getting, killed in crashes, or people on streets super dangerous, and people are like, well, they should just look across the street. I'm like, you know what? If everybody is crossing mid-block and people keep getting hit because they are quote unquote jaywalking, which I'll let you know, in New Jersey there's no such thing as jaywalking. You cannot get a ticket for that because it's not against the law. You can cross as long as no cars are coming. You can cross wherever you want. Just so you know, New Jersey.
Okay.
Not Los
Not
Angeles.
LA.
Not
Okay.
LA. In LA, I don't know.
You.
Ticket you.
Yeah.
But New Jersey, there's no jaywalking. But if people keep crossing mid-block, you should do? You should probably add a mid-block crosswalk instead of forcing people. These super long blocks, especially on the East Coast, you have these super long blocks, and then people are like, "Oh, I'm going to cross the middle." Of course, they're going to cross the middle. That's what the natural thing that people should do. You could have mid-block crosswalks, but I mean that's the whole thing. You're not looking at human behavior. We need to be using engineering and human behavior in order to fix our roads. And also, too, ticketing people to death is not going to work. That's not going to fix bad engineering. And you're disproportionately impacting people of color and poor people when you do it, because that's how many people are going to get tickets. Nobody else is getting tickets. People are still going to get, run over in the white communities, but you're not going to ticket them with the same level of intensity.
What can people do after they watch this video that you think is something, maybe perhaps low level but effective?
Go to your urban planning meetings. I mean, I think that people, your urban planning meeting is where everything is decided. It's where buildings are, when they decide to put a development in your neighborhood, when they decide to put a certain street in your neighborhood, when they decide to do various transportation items. I mean, your urban planning board or your transportation board, go to either one of those and participate. I know it doesn't sound glamorous, but really that's why I've learned. And in Los Angeles and New York, the most important meeting to go to is the planning meeting. The plum in LA it's a plum. They're called different things, but the planning meeting is one of the most important meetings to go to, because that's where all of the little funny business starts. It starts there, and if you could stop it or at least get a head start so you can know what's happening, because that's they expect no one to show up. They expect no one to show up, and when you do show up, film them. That's another thing too. You don't even have to talk. Film them though. If they're going to do something that's kind of not appropriate, the lowest thing you can go to your planning meetings, go to your transportation meetings, and if they're doing something that you find that you don't like, don't worry about so much talking. Film them and then show it to your friends and spread it around on social media and tag them. They really don't like that.
What is the projection of black kids in outer space?
Projection.
Yeah, like what? Yeah. We're talking about the future, right?
The future.
So.
I mean, the future, I'd hope to be, a vehicle where we are talking about urban planning and transportation, not just in the United States, but in Canada, in the Caribbean, in Africa, and we're all can learn from each other and learn and share our information and share so that we can make black space comfortable and fun no matter where we are. Not like, it's not like, I gotta go to Atlanta. I mean, really, that's why I kind of be like, I kind of feel like Atlanta is like Wakanda or something. Like,
it's not. Trust, I live there.
I know people keep telling me that, but I'm like, why do all these, and everybody that I interviewed from Atlanta, they all look like little black fairies. Like, so we were here, and we were riding our bicycles.
They weren't where I was. Okay.
Yeah.
My head thing fell off. Okay. Keep going.
But it was, that's the whole hope. It's just kind of like give people information and to be able to share. And also, too, as black people, we are so dependent on the white media to legitimize us. I want to create a media that's good enough so that you don't have to make white people happy in order to get coverage. Like you can have, like, say you have a project and you want to have kids riding bicycles, or you have a dream for a train station. You don't have to get, I would be powerful enough that me covering you would legitimize what you're saying and be able to amplify what you're saying. I think that's something that's really important, because we have to kind of keep these gatekeepers happy. And I want to be able to be the person where you can be yourself, you can be for black people, you can even be for Latinx people, indigenous people. Yes, I'm focusing on black people, but say you have a project and it's a good project and you're helping people. I want to be a vehicle that you can come to my show and talk about that. You don't have to, what if the Atlantic already has their one black person quota for the month? You know what I mean? Like say that's the whole thing. It's like you become like the flavor of the month, and if you're not that flavor that month, then you're done. Yeah. Like so if you're doing a project in Atlanta, if a black person's doing a project in Atlanta, a black person's doing a project in Arizona, a black person's doing a project in Toronto, guess what? I can cover all three of you this month. I don't have to go like, well, we already got our black story for the month. We can't cover anybody else.
We feel good about ourselves.
Yeah. We feel
Ta-Nehisi Coates has come.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, I want to be that too. Like, what if more than one black person does something in 1 week? I want to cover both of them.
Right.
So
I really do enjoy your energy, your perspective, and I applaud your work. Thank you for stopping by with Ark Republic. We look forward to hearing what Black Kids in Outer Space is doing. We hope we're there in the future with you.
Okay. No, you're always welcome on the ship.
The mothership, that is.
Yeah, you're always welcome on the mothership. Yeah.
Thank you, sis. Peace. I appreciate you.
Okay, thank you.
You don't always funk with me, but when you do, you funk with me so hard.